Hey everybody, this is PD from the Spinner Rack, and today I'm going to do my top 10 graphic novels. Not the graphic novels that everyone thinks of The Dark Knight and the Watchmen. What I'm doing, those are collections, so those would be more trade paperbacks and the hardcover trade paperbacks. So what I'm going to do is the traditional graphic novel, which would be the single volume graphic novel, one story and one book, right? Just like a regular novel has one story in it, you can have a series of those, but it's just one novel. And I'm going by size, right? So we're starting with smallest to biggest. We have Kyle Baker's Nat Turner, right? So this is actually collected, but I'm still considering this is where I bought it. It's one volume. His interpretation of the Nat Turner story, right? Some notes. It's a very nice volume. You can see some of the nice effects that he did in Africa. And see, this one is a lot more like a silent sort of story. And all the stories sort of conveyed in here. And this is all leading up to getting to the Americas. And this is a gorgeous silent story. A master of the craft, Kyle Baker. He has a bunch. Here's a few other graphic novels that you should get. And then, of course, using some supers in here, but it's mostly, and then you get some text later on, right? But this very limited amount of text in this story. Something that is a must buy. All these are must buys. Get them as soon as you can. Let's switch this one out for Darren Cook's Parker. Now, this is a series, obviously, the Richard Stark's Parker series. Darren Cook adapted 4 of these. And these are just nice, even though it has more of a, I guess sort of a 50s sort of feel. The nice effects you get with this 2-color format. Oh, yeah, so it'd be black and the blue would be the 2 colors. And just great storytelling. This one, does he get in? I'm not sure if he gets into a lot of effects in here. But I'm not going to give this too much of it away. But, let's see. Do we have. This one was a little more straightforward. Okay, here we go. So we have text and pictures. A lot of different ways of telling this story. And obviously, another master of the craft, another silent setup where he's telling that story. And you can see as he moves on, he uses a lot more effects in the rest of the series. But, Parker will return. And these were, just a classic run by Darren Cook. R.I.P. Darren Cook. Then this was a surprise because we have Dave Mazda, who is Daredevil and Batman Year One fame, who I thought was going to go on to be the biggest thing since sliced bread. But ultimately, he moved away from comic books and he did his Rubber Blanket. He did stuff for the New Yorker, illustrations for the New Yorker. And he also did, I think it was, what was that? It was another illustrated novel, right? But this one here, Asteros Polyp, this is, if you didn't know he was already a master of the form, in this story, he kind of uses every technique imaginable, especially using what I would call way more advanced than what you would do in the comics from the 50s, using mood color to set up settings and such. And because this one doesn't use mood was changed panel to panel. And this sort of effects, he just uses a lot of different effects in here. So it's not just one sort of style like you get to hear and sort of talking about the schooling. You see all these different effects are in here. And this is what I'm talking about going forward when I look at the graphic novels. I'm using sort of different approaches to tell the story, and then getting to this open area, a little more open with color, and so the family drama was a little more silly, and then romance drama that's in here. So there's so many things visual that's in here that everyone should take a look at. Right? Oh, this one's going pretty smoothly. Now this one, I know for any Harlan Ellison fans, this one would be questionable, especially since DC didn't continue their series of graphic novels. There was few and far between. There's Batman ones. But in here, this is Marshall Rogers adapting the teleplay, the original one, which was, because I think it had to be, it was supposed to be a chase, but it all takes place in a building, and that's one of Marshall Rogers' strengths. It's another artist who's passed. Now, Harlan Ellison, who's also passed, R.I.P. him too, he didn't like this series, and we're going to get to another artist that's of the same caliber. I think Harlan wanted it to be more Steranko-esque, to really just do a lot of cool shots with his script. And ultimately, he's just telling this story. Really straightforward, just showing you, just graphically handling this story of a demon with a glass hand, right? And it's Harlan Ellison, so it's always going to be a dark sort of thing. But the use of this landscape and architecture is basically one of Marshall's strengths, besides drawing great babes. But this is the actual story that you see, the story that the Terminator was kind of based on. Some of the aspects of it, of the guy, you see the girl he was saving and whatnot. So just to show you how graphic that graphic picture to sell the book. And then we're also going to go to another of the sci-fi graphic novels that DC did, which is Star Raiders. This would be sort of the same team that worked on Atari Force. You can hear some Atari bits in this one too. So we have Star Raiders, which is DC letting them do their own Star Wars type saga with weird aliens. But this sort of, not even sure if it's colored in pencils, but it has that effect. And it's just one of the best books to have, and decent story by Elliot S. Maggin, the Superman writer. It's really getting Garcia Lopez to do stuff that's outside of the superhero frame, stuff that he'd be more interested in rather than superheroes, right? But it's another cool book to really get. We're getting to, wow, this is going quicker than I expected. We're getting to the big one. This is not really the earliest. No, this is not the earliest one, but this is what made this form famous. This is the classic. You saw the two DC graphic novels in this sort of format. This is the format for, this what really made this format famous. And this one I got signed by Walter Simonson. I have the artist edition of that. And this was also serialized in Epic Illustrated. No, not Epic, so it was illustrated in Heavy Metal. And you just have this cool effect, which I think this studio really liked, that the title was done with the alien thing on it. And they also like this with the alien title wrapping around the thing to do something visual with the super, with that title. And it's just a translation of it. Some of the bits that are in this aren't in the movie. There's some things in the script that were cut out, but mostly it's pretty much the same. And they also reveal how the alien hides. Like this, there's a deleted scene of Sigourney getting slapped. But I just want to get to the big payoff, translating all that different sort of things in different ways. And then the big payoff, and then I'll leave this one right here, right? So we did that. Now we get to the mother or father of all graphic novels. That would be Chandler by James Steranko, right? This is a classic illustrated novel. Before they had the term graphic novel. And this one is another one where it was called Red Tide. It's called Chandler, but it also has the title of Red Tide. Much more graphic title. And in here, we have this effect where he uses a certain number of words a page and a panel to go with it, right? So you had this cool effect throughout. Now the colors, if you've seen the black and whites of this, and I believe this is all pencil drawing, reprinted so it looked like this. So have this something you would see closer to Sin City, and I think who was it? Frank Miller kind of pushed it even harder, the harsh lighting, or was it Chiaroscuro? But this is another must-have. It's one of the early graphic novels, if not the first. And you just have some cool stuff in here, playing off of the words and pictures, right? That's a definite must, and I really wish they would reprint this in a black and white volume. Now, this is a classic, and for many reasons. Obviously, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, with illustrations by Bernie Wrightson, R.I.P. Bernie Wrightson, and with his collaborator who did the intro, Stephen King, who Stephen King also did, they did the stand images and what's that thing? But this, he's talked about it in the past, about trying to use the tools of that time. So you have the novel, but then you have all these nice effects and all this cool stuff here. Let's get to what you'd really like to see. Seeing the monster kind of doing his thing. And look at that. All right. So, even if you've read this before on its own, you should read it with these illustrations. Not doing the classic monster, trying to come up with a monster of his own, right? So then, there's many graphic novels of Frank's to pull from, but I decided to be diplomatic and use Elektra Lives Again by Epic and Marvel to sort of showcase Frank Miller. Now I could have gone for a single volume Sin City, but ultimately Elektra Lives Again is in the style that he used for for the covers of what was that called? Of Lone Wolf and Cub. So this return to Matt Murdock and Daredevil. I'm not sure I don't think Daredevil appears in costume, but you have still the high contrast sort of artwork. Some nice effects in here. And there was some ads that I really liked of this stuff in the snow. This sort of color. I don't know. This is just good. You saw on Wolverine cover use this style too, and it's not much of this, but this is pretty much all we got of this style. There's a couple other things, but this is the big payoff of this style right here. Right? And so many cool things in here, especially here with the ninjas in white, and then Elektra appearing. And then, of course, we got some bullseye stuff here. Oh, yeah, Daredevil appeared here, right? So, a lot of cool stuff, right? So, we're coming to our end And since we ended sooner than I expected, it took me only 15 minutes, we have Alex Ross's graphic novel with Paul Dini, Peace. Now this is, alright, there's another one that I would say measures up to this one, because it's like Superman the movie, if you consider like Superman Muhammad Ali as Superman the movie on comic form. This is definitely Superman the movie on the printed page, and also it's a purely Superman story. And this is one of the things that I found interesting, is that when you look at this story, it doesn't really have the classic Superman cast. There's somewhere in there in some of the panels and whatnot, but ultimately it's one of those things where it's just a pure Superman story about him trying to help the Earth out, and it still works. It's still one of those things that kind of, you get it, and it's one of the things where Superman can be in space and you not miss Jimmy or Lois or Perry White or his parents and stuff like that. You can do sort of Superman stories that's without all the classic cast, and you could still get a powerful Superman story, right? But there's other ones that Alex Ross did which are just as good. I'm going to point out one in maybe one of my later videos, but this is the purest. I think the Batman one is kind of rougher because Batman as a solo element without Commissioner Gordon or Alfred or even Robin or the other Bat characters doesn't work as well. It's always fun to have, if you have the ultimate Superman story with the ultimate artist, seeing how it works without those characters that are so classic to it, right? So I guess we got through our video. So I'm going to keep that there and just quickly point out some notable ones that weren't in the top 10. Silver Surfer by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. This is a reprint of the classic volume from the 70s, which would be Marvel's first graphic novel. On the byline, there's no distinction between Jack Kirby, Stan and Jack, which is the way Jack wanted it. But then in the credits here, they say that. But if we go to the first page, and this is where Stan lets out that the Silver Surfer was kind of just thrown in by Kirby. So this is the opening image of the Silver Surfer graphic novel. And that's the open. So this is, I mean, the story is just okay, but I mean, this is like just having Stan and Jack together doing the Silver Surfer. So it's all to the good. So that there. Also going to Mike Mignola's Hellboy with Duncan Fedrego and Dave Stewart. Now I wanted to have something Mike Mignola. I only have something he wrote, so you got a nice cover by Mike Mignola, since I'm a big fan of his. And what else do I got here? Duncan Fedrego is one of the artists that followed Mike Mignola, and of course he's one of, well, I mean, all of the illustrators that have done Hellboy after Mike Mignola passed it on to other artists are just phenomenal. And he is just a classic. I mean, he's just a great artist. I think when you have Neil Adams saying, "Hey, how's Duncan Fedrego on Hellboy? How's everybody think about that?" You have Neil Adams singing your praises. That's enough. So, with that said, we also have, I wanted to do something John Byrne. So I have this one, Stowaway to the Stars, which is his last sort of published thing. And we just have this short story, which is a coloring book. There's also a color version. This also harkens back to the black and white story that he did in Art of John Byrne. It's interesting to see how much he's grown since that point in his career. Like, look at this sort of, where it was just sort of a island paradise, and then now this is a total futuristic story, right? Going to sort of a, so I kind of want to spoil it, but ultimately, this isn't even something to spoil. This is something to color. So I have mine. I started coloring one of these and another one that I haven't colored yet. And then I have the one that's colored that's done in color. So that's, I mean, all of these I'm trying to say is a must buy because I have them, right? And lastly, my last notable honorable mentions is the game's graphic novel. Now you're going to see some similarities between this and what Marshall Rogers did, right? Because you're going to see some of the paneling like that. But this is Perez. I wanted to have something Perez in here since I'm a big fan of Perez. Marvin Perez talking about the series. You see that sort of layout that you saw Marshall Rogers did. You see Perez sort of do that stuff. And it's just fun seeing this kind of finish, not the way it was done in the past, but a lot of different effects as far as paneling. You can see Perez sort of take stuff you see from Chaikin and Miller and kind of do his own take on it, and his own take on those type of layouts and multi-panel page. Since Perez at this point was doing a lot of panels per page, you have a lot of cool stuff. A lot of what else I want to say about this? There's something else I wanted to show in the big fight scene. That's cool. Sorry, I hit the camera. It's never good. That's what I wanted to see. Ultimately, if you're saying it didn't hit the mark for you, this, that, and the other, you know, can't always go back home. In my mind, this is Jericho's finest moment. Outside of obviously the Judas contract, where he appears, and what was that? What's the other story he did? Perez's first Titans Baxter issue. Let's see. We have Jericho in the Guggenheim, right? He gets attacked by this character, and then Perez, even if you're kind of iffy on it, this is where he's trying things and pushing storytelling here, saying, at this point now, I'm trusting in my storytelling skills that you'll get when this guy attacks, knocks Jericho off. Jericho is somewhat of an acrobat. So as he's falling down in the Guggenheim and you're worried about him, you see him catch here. So it's just like one of my favorite pages ever. So then you get this nice establishing shot of the Guggenheim, and then you have them jump off here. And I'm going to leave you there. That's the end of my video. Thank you.